Houdini said, nobody wants a man to fall to his death, but they want to be there when it happens.
There's one kind of magic that puts the magician in danger, or appears to. This is the story of how dangerous magic has been defined by one man's legacy for more than 100 years. Whilst he certainly didn't invent the genre, he's overshadowed every performer who's followed him.
Harry Houdini pretty well dominated the magic of his day and has thus become a legend, someone that young magicians like to emulate.
Sometimes people kindly compare me to Houdini, and I take it as a huge compliment.
Even the most extreme magicians creating new stunts today have been inspired by one of the greatest showmen the world has ever known, Harry Houdini.
I have almost died. Legitimately, death, game over. Upstairs doing card tricks for Elvis. About a half a dozen times.
Robert Gallup. He's bonkers.
Probably the greatest influence in my life has been Houdini. If Houdini were alive today, what would he do? Escape from handcuffs. He'd escape from mailbags before. He's a big escaper of jail cells. Big fan of aircrafts. Aircraft's hardly been off the ground. He was already thinking, what can I do with a plane? And it came to me. Aircrafts, handcuffs, mailbag, jail cells. Now this would be cool. This is something Houdini would do. I go, yeah.
Robert Gallup is one of the current generation of extreme escapologists. In 1996, inspired by his hero, Gallup created Death Dive. Pushed out of the back of this aeroplane over the Mojave Desert, he had seconds to escape before drilling a hole in the ground.
The challenge of the Death Dive, it's not a trick, it's not an illusion. It's just kind of a well-calculated escape challenge. And there's risk, there's legitimate risk. I had to escape from the handcuffs and the leg manacles. I was bagged inside of a mail bag. The mail bag was looped with chains and padlocked. The mail bag itself was chained and suspended in the center of an 8-foot square jail cell. And my parachute was attached to the outside of the jail cell. While throwing myself out of a plane at 18,000 feet, I had about 45 seconds to escape from the chains, the locks, the shackles, escape from the mail bag, climb out of the mail bag, climb over to the jail cell door, pick the lock on the front of the jail cell door, open the door, climb out, grab my parachute, attach my parachute, get away from the jail cell, hopefully with enough altitude to still deploy my parachute and land safely. 9 months it took me until we could actually pull it off. 9 months leading up to 45 seconds. Probably the dangerous, most harrowing, certainly the most harrowing 45 seconds of my life. And I was just amped to do it, and pretty stoked when we pulled it off.
Gallup has made a career out of thrilling and amazing audiences, narrowly appearing to avoid death in the most perilous of circumstances. Few performers can aspire to his degree of daredevilry.
Why does a magician knowingly put themselves in danger? Partly for the same reason, I think, that people in other areas put themselves in danger. A racing driver puts himself in danger. A horse rider puts themselves in danger because they themselves get a kind of buzz out of it and a kind of thrill from it. I think with a magician there's one other level, though. The ancient shaman claimed a kind of power by virtue of taking risks. He will perhaps enter some kind of trance-like state in the middle of winter in the cold, or be buried alive. They then return to the tribe with the power that risk confers upon them.
Escapology traces its origins to these ancient religious trials. Street performers learnt the shaman's tricks of the trade.
The allied arts, acts which involve beds of nails, swords being placed through your body, seems to have been part of a general movement to take religious ceremonies from one tradition, transplant them into another tradition, and turn them into entertainment, and often actually quite cheap entertainment.
This fellow would puncture himself with 1 skewer for 1 cent, 2 skewers for 2 cents, 3 cents for 3 skewers. It could only cost you 3 cents because he only had 3 skewers. And these are the things that you see in the East that cause you to wonder.
The origin of all this material comes, for the most part, from the Eastern cultures. This is it, this is the one, you've read about it, you heard about it, now you got to see it live. It's the world's greatest gathering of human curiosities. In India, the Jadduwala, the street performers, are still doing many of the things that, that I do on the stage here, and they have been doing it for hundreds of years.
I wanted to see Twisting, I wanted to see the Human Blockhead, the Sword Swallower, the Fire Eater, Little Jimmy, and all the other great acts and attractions. So do yourself a favor, get yourself a ticket, and come on the inside. It's showtime at the Sideshow.
When you look at people like the Fire Kings and the Sword Swallowers, you're seeing what you're assuming to be actual danger. But these people inevitably have their own tricks of the trade, which come quite close to the tricks of the performing magician.
Oh, come on. You never know when the throat is going to seize up on you. And when that happens, you have to be very careful to not panic, because if you do and you rip it out, you're going to be ripping up your esophagus. And the most minor of injuries you could do there is just get abrasion, scratches. The worst thing that could happen is that you're actually going to get a laceration that's going to cause hemorrhaging, and you'll probably be dead in about 10 minutes. Or, that's assuming it goes down the throat. If you are not aligned properly, you can actually puncture the esophagus, and then it's about 5 minutes before you die. Hammering a nail into your nose, or laying on a bed of nails, or eating fire, or swallowing a sword, all of it is based on technique. There's nothing paranormal about this.
In the 2nd century BC in Sicily, there was a slaves' uprising, and their leader, called Eunice, was a great orator and inspired them through his speeches, but also by the fact that as he spoke, he breathed fire.
You go back to the medieval fairgrounds and marketplaces, you would see a magician, and that is also where you would see the juggler and the wire walker and the strongman and the fire eater. And that was a tradition that carried right through to the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, where you had a series of sideshow attractions.
The question that arises in your minds, is that man or is it woman?
The sword swallower, the bearded lady, the fat lady, the thin lady, and the magician.
It was here that a young magician called Harry Houdini learned the skills that would make him famous worldwide.